In the quiet reaches of the Outer Rim, a human colony named New Horizon thrived amidst lush landscapes and vibrant communities. It was a place where dreams were built and futures forged on a distant world, far from the heart of the sprawling Galactic Alliance. But that peace was shattered on a fateful morning, when the sky darkened with the silhouettes of massive alien ships descending like a storm. The alarm bells rang out across the colony, a shrill cry piercing the morning calm. Panic erupted as families scrambled to gather their loved ones and find shelter among the towering structures of their home sphere. Surged through the streets as the realization of the invasion set in. People had heard the stories of the relentless Drakari, a brutal race known for their merciless conquest of worlds, yet no one expected them to arrive at New Horizon. Among the chaos, a young engineer named Ilara was working in her workshop, nestled at the edge of town. She had always found solace in tinkering with machines and dreaming of new inventions. Her hands moved deftly as she calibrated a small drone that she had designed to help with agricultural tasks. When the sirens blared, her heart raced with dread. As she glanced out the window, her eyes widened at the sight of the alien ships. Overhead, they were colossal, menacing vessels bristling with weaponry, and adorned with the symbols of their ruthless empire. She felt a pang of fear for her friends and family, but also an urgent sense of purpose. Ilara gathered her tools and rushed out into the street, dodging fleeing citizens as she made her way toward the town square, where a makeshift command center had been established. The leader of the colony, Captain Jurek, stood at the forefront, his face a mask of determination as he addressed the terrified crowd. "We will not go down without a fight," he shouted, his voice rising above the din. "We will defend our home and protect our families." But as he spoke, the ground trembled under the weight of the descending ships. The first blasts of energy weapons illuminated the sky. Ilara's heart pounded as she watched the chaos unfold. She knew the colony was outmatched, but she also understood that fear could not be allowed to paralyze them. With each passing moment, the invaders drew closer. Their ships unleashed torrents of fire that engulfed buildings in flames and sent people running for their lives. In the midst of the turmoil, Ilara spotted something glinting in the rubble, a metallic object half buried in the debris. She dashed toward it, her instincts guiding her as she reached down to unearth the item. It was a small device adorned with intricate carvings, unlike anything she had seen before. As she held the device in her hands, a strange energy pulsed through her fingertips. It came softly, almost as if it were a live curiosity, and dread mingled within her. Could this be a weapon, a tool, or something entirely different? She had no idea, but she sensed its potential. With the colony in disarray and time running out, Ilara made a quick decision. She rushed back to the command center, clutching the device tightly in her grip. Captain Jurek was still rallying the remaining defenders. "This," she began breathlessly, "is something I found. We need to examine it. It could be crucial to our survival." Jarek's eyes narrowed as he took in the sight of the device. The weight of hope and desperation hung heavy in the air. Could this small artifact hold the key to shifting the balance of power against the Drakari? Could it turn the tide of war before it even began? As the first shots continued to rain down around them, Ilara knew that whatever this device was, it might just be their last hope in a galaxy on the brink of destruction. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an eerie glow over the ruins of New Horizon, the atmosphere was thick with tension and uncertainty. Ilara stood before Captain Jurek, her heart racing. As she presented the mysterious device, it hummed softly in her grasp, as if resonating with the energy of the chaos surrounding them. Jurek studied the artifact, his brow furrowing in concentration. The remnants of their home lay in ruins around them, but within this small object lay a glimmer of hope. If they could unlock its secrets, it might provide the edge they desperately needed against the invading Drakari. Gathering what remained of their forces, Jurek called a meeting in the command center. The once bustling square now resembled a war room, filled with worried faces of both humans and allied species who had sought refuge in New Horizon. They were all aware of the stakes, but uncertainty loomed large. Ilara stepped forward, eager to share her findings. "I believe this device is ancient. It may hold technology far beyond our understanding. It could be a weapon or a defensive mechanism, but we need to study it before we can make any decisions." The crowd murmured in intrigue, but skepticism hung in the air. A tall alien warrior with vibrant scales and a fierce demeanor stepped forward, his voice low and menacing. "Do you really think this little trinket can save us? We are facing an empire that has crushed entire worlds." Jarek raised a hand, silencing the dissent. "We have no choice. We cannot allow fear to dictate our actions. We must explore every avenue available to us, and this may be our best chance." After a moment of hesitation, the alien warrior nodded reluctantly. "We will follow your lead, human, but know that the clock is ticking. We have little time before the Drakari come to finish what they started." With their decision made, Ilara and a small team of engineers gathered around a makeshift workstation. They began to analyze the device. Under the dim glow of flickering lights, its surface was covered in strange symbols and intricate patterns. Hours passed as they worked feverishly deciphering the technology hidden within the artifact. Ilara's mind raced with possibilities. Each new discovery fueled her determination. They had to understand how to activate it, how to harness its power. Finally, as dawn approached, they made a breakthrough. The device was a power source capable of generating immense energy. It could potentially amplify their weapons, or create a shield strong enough to withstand the Drakari's firepower. Ilara's excitement bubbled over. "We can turn this into a defensive system. If we can integrate it with our existing tech, we might stand a chance against the invasion." Jarek's eyes sparkled with renewed hope. "This is the turning point. We need to rally our forces. We can use this technology to strike back and reclaim our home." As the first rays of sunlight broke through the clouds, illuminating the devastation around them, the mood shifted from despair to determination. They gathered their allies and explained the plan. "We will harness this energy to fortify our defenses," Jarek announced with a fierce glint in his eye. "And to empower our weapons. We may be outnumbered, but we will not be outmatched." The group erupted in cheers as hope sparked within their hearts, and for the first time since the invasion began, they felt a sense of purpose rising from the ashes of their shattered world. Ilara stood among them, filled with a mix of excitement and trepidation. They had only begun to understand the device's true potential, but as they prepared for the impending battle, she knew that this was their moment to reclaim their destiny. Together they would unite. As one, they would transform fear into strength, and perhaps, just perhaps, they could shift the tide of war against the Drakari and secure a future for their people. In the days that followed, the atmosphere in New Horizon shifted from despair to a fervent determination. The remnants of the colony's defenses were reinforced with the newly discovered technology. Ilara worked tirelessly alongside her fellow engineers, weaving together the ancient device with their modern weaponry. As they labored, Ilara felt a sense of connection with her colleagues, each of them driven by a shared purpose. The hum of machinery mixed with the sounds of laughter and camaraderie as they transformed fear into hope. Captain Jarek convened a council of leaders from various alien races who had come together under the banner of resistance. Each represented a unique culture and perspective, some skeptical, others eager to embrace the alliance. Jarek stood before them, addressing the assembly with a commanding presence. "We have been brought together by a common enemy, but we must also acknowledge our differences, our pasts, our grievances, if we are to succeed." An elder alien with shimmering blue skin raised a hand, his voice steady but firm. "We have fought against the Drakari for centuries. We cannot simply trust the humans with our fate." Ilara stepped forward, feeling the weight of his gaze. "We understand your hesitance," she said passionately, "but we have a chance to change the narrative, to redefine our destinies together." A murmur of agreement rippled through the room as Jarek continued, "We must unite our strengths, our technologies, our knowledge, if we are to stand against this overwhelming force." The discussions turned heated with voices rising and arguments flaring, but through it all Elara remained focused on the goal they needed to find common ground and forge an alliance that would withstand the coming storm. As the sun set casting long shadows across the gathered assembly, a younger alien warrior named Kale stood up, his eyes ablaze with conviction. "I lost my family to the Drakari. I will fight alongside the humans if it means avenging them." His words resonated deeply with the assembly, awakening the fire of resolve within each leader as they began to share their own stories of loss and defiance. The council reached a turning point, and an agreement was forged. They would combine their forces, not only in battle, but in technology and strategy. Elara's heart swelled with hope as the alliance solidified. With newfound unity, the leaders began to plan their next moves. They established communication channels between their ships and formulated strategies to confront the Drakari. Elara worked closely with Kale and other engineers to develop a prototype weapon powered by the ancient device. They were combining their knowledge to create something truly formidable. In the midst of their preparations, a distress signal crackled through the comms system. It was a plea for help for a nearby human outpost under siege by the Drakari. Without hesitation, Jarek rallied the allies. "This is our chance to strike back. We will not allow another colony to fall. We must act now." The assembly sprang into action as ships were prepped and warriors rallied, their hearts beating in sync with the urgency of the moment. Elara climbed aboard a sleek starfighter, her hands steady on the controls, her mind focused on the mission ahead. As the fleet launched into the void, she felt a surge of determination coursing through her veins. They were no longer just humans fighting for their survival. They were part of a coalition ready to reclaim their future. The stars twinkled above them, a stark contrast to the impending chaos they would face. But as they sped through the darkness toward the beleaguered outpost, Elara knew that they were not alone. They had allies. Now they had a chance to rewrite their fate. With every pulse of the ship's engines, she felt the weight of responsibility, but also the thrill of possibility. They were on the brink of something monumental, and no matter what awaited them, they would face it together, united in purpose and resolve. As the fleet approached the beleaguered human outpost, a sense of urgency gripped the crew. The distress signal had grown weaker with each passing moment. The dark silhouette of the outpost came into view, a small station surrounded by the wreckage of previous battles. Elara's heart raced as she scanned the chaos unfolding below. Massive Drakari ships loomed over the outpost, unleashing torrents of fire, while desperate defenders fought to hold their ground. Jarek's voice rang through the comms. "All units prepare for attack. We strike hard and fast. We cannot allow the Drakari to claim another world." Elara tightened her grip on the controls, her pulse quickening in rhythm with the thrumming engines. The newly developed weapon, powered by the ancient device, hummed softly beside her. Its potential felt almost electric. The ships of the Alliance surged forward, a brilliant array of colors and designs, blending into a formidable formation. The moment had arrived. They would not simply defend, they would retaliate. As they descended into the fray, the sounds of battle engulfed them. The roar of energy blasts and the cries of warriors filled the air. Elara focused on the chaos outside, drawing strength from the unity of their forces. A Drakari cruiser loomed ahead, its hull bristling with weapons and arrogance. Jarek barked orders as the ships broke formation, launching a coordinated attack. The Alliance was ready to fight back. Elara activated the weapon system, her heart racing. As the device pulsed with energy, the controls lit up, displaying readouts and data streams. Her mind worked quickly, translating the science into action. "Firing in 3, 2, 1, she shouted, and the weapon unleashed a surge of brilliant energy that streaked toward the Drakari cruiser. It struck with an explosion of light, and power of the shockwave reverberated through space. The enemy ship shuddered under the impact, spiraling out of control and crashing into another vessel as debris scattered across the battlefield. Cheers erupted in the cockpit. But there was no time to celebrate. Jarek's voice cut through the excitement. "Stay focused, we have to protect the outpost and drive them back." Ilara nodded and scanned the battlefield, her eyes darting over the chaotic scene. She spotted a group of Drakari troops boarding the outpost. They had breached the defenses and were making their way inside. "We need to assist the defenders," she shouted, diverting her ship toward the outpost as the others followed suit. As they descended lower, Ilara felt the weight of responsibility pressing on her. They were not just fighting for survival, they were fighting for the lives of their comrades, for the future of their people. Inside, the outpost defenders held their ground, but they were vastly outnumbered. She could see the grim determination in their eyes as they faced the oncoming wave of invaders. With a fierce battle cry, Ilara and the allied fighters swooped in, unleashing a barrage of fire that caught the Drakari off guard. Chaos erupted as the attackers were forced to regroup. Jarek's voice echoed through the comms, "Keep pushing, we must reclaim control of the outpost, they can't hold us back." Ilara maneuvered her ship with precision, using the ancient weapon to cut a path through the enemy lines. The hum of energy and the roar of her ship filled her with exhilaration. As they fought their way toward the heart of the outpost, Ilara caught sight of a familiar face, one of the defenders she had known since childhood. He was pinned down behind a barricade. She felt a surge of determination. She would not let fear take hold. She would fight for him and for all those who called this outpost home. Ilara dived her ship toward the barricade, unleashing fire that cleared a path for the defenders to regroup. With renewed strength, they pushed back against the Drakari forces, fighting not just for survival, but for each other. In that moment, as they stood united against the tide of chaos, she knew they had become something more than a coalition. They were a force bound by shared purpose, ready to face whatever came next together. The battle raged on as Ilara and her allies fought to reclaim the outpost. The air was thick with the acrid smell of smoke and burnt metal, the sounds of combat echoing in every direction. As they pushed deeper into the heart of the station, Ilara felt a surge of adrenaline driving her forward, each pulse of her ship's weapons fueled by the energy of the ancient device. She maneuvered through the chaos, guiding her ship alongside Jarek's as they provided cover for the ground troops engaged in fierce firefights with the invading Drakari soldiers. In the midst of the melee, a flicker of movement caught her eye. An enormous Drakari warrior charged forward, weapon raised, ready to strike down a group of defenders. Without thinking, Ilara reacted instinctively. Her ship veered toward the threat. She fired a concentrated blast from the ancient weapon, striking the warrior directly. The explosion sent the hulking figure flying backward. The defenders cheered as they witnessed the tide of battle beginning to shift. But the victory was fleeting as Ilara's comm system crackled with a message from Jarek. "We need to secure the control room. The enemy is trying to take it. We must prevent them from accessing the station's systems." Understanding the urgency, Ilara focused her attention on the control room located at the center of the outpost. She could see Drakari troops swarming around the entrance. Her heart pounded in her chest. With a burst of determination, she rallied her fellow pilots. "We need to clear a path. Let's go." The Allied ships formed a tight formation as they approached the control room, unleashing a coordinated assault on the enemy forces. Ilara felt a rush of exhilaration as her ship surged forward. She was no longer just an engineer, she was a warrior fighting for her home. As they closed in on the control room, the air was charged with energy, their combined efforts creating a powerful front against the enemy. Jarek led the charge, his voice booming through the comms. "Push forward. We need to secure this area now." Ilara followed closely behind, her eyes locked on the control room. She could see defenders inside holding their ground, but their numbers were dwindling. In a moment of inspiration, she activated the ancient weapon, channeling its energy into a focused beam. and unleashed it toward the entrance of the control room. The blast struck the doorframe, exploding outward and scattering Drakari soldiers. Like leaves in a storm, the opening was clear. Now Ilara shouted, "We go." With a fierce battle cry, the Allied troops surged forward. Charging into the control room, they fought side by side with renewed strength driven by desperation and hope. Inside the room, the atmosphere was electric. As they engaged the last remnants of the Drakari forces, the defenders had fought valiantly, but they were exhausted. Ilara fought alongside them, her movements instinctual and fierce as she cut through the remaining enemies with precision. As the dust began to settle, she realized they had secured the control room. The cheers of victory rang out as the last of the Drakari were driven back. Jarek stood at the front of the room, his face lit with triumph. "We did it, we've taken control. Now we need to activate the defenses and prepare for any counterattacks." Ilara felt a wave of relief wash over her, but it was short-lived as the gravity of the situation sunk in. They had won a battle, but the war was far from over. Together they turned their attention to the station's control systems. The screens flickered to life, displaying the chaos outside ships engaged in a brutal dance of survival as the fight continued. Ilara's fingers flew across the console as she began to assess the damage and gather data on the enemy forces. They had to be ready for whatever the Drakari would throw at them next. As she worked, she couldn't shake the feeling that this battle was only the beginning. They had to prepare for a larger conflict, one that would determine the fate of their worlds. But in that moment, they had reclaimed a stronghold and ignited a fire within the hearts of the defenders, and the Allies, their unity, was a force to be reckoned with. They were not merely fighting for survival, they were fighting for each other, and for a future where freedom could flourish in the galaxy once more. As the dust settled in the control room, the atmosphere buzzed with a mix of triumph and tension. Ilara felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. They had fought hard, but the battle was far from over. Jarek rallied the remaining defenders and allies around the central console. "We need to fortify our position and prepare for a counterattack. The Drakari will not let this setback go unanswered." Ilara nodded, her heart racing, as she began to analyze the data streaming in from the battlefield. The screens flickered, showing enemy positions and their movements outside. Just as they were about to finalize their plans, a warning siren blared, cutting through the tension. A voice crackled over the comms. "The Drakari are regrouping. They're preparing for a massive assault." The atmosphere shifted again as uncertainty crept in. The defenders exchanged worried glances. The initial victory felt fragile, and the stakes had only grown higher. Jarek stepped forward and addressed the group. "We've proven that we can fight back, and we've turned the tide in our favor, but we must stay vigilant. They will come at us with everything they have." Ilara felt a spark of doubt creeping into her thoughts. The Drakari were known for their ruthless tactics and overwhelming numbers. What if they couldn't hold their ground? Before she could voice her concerns, Kel, the young alien warrior who had fought bravely alongside her, spoke up. "We have the advantage of surprise. We have unity on our side. Let's make them regret underestimating us." His words ignited a fire within the group. They were more than just individuals. They were a coalition united against a common foe. Ilara returned to her console, focused on fortifying their defenses. The ancient device pulsed with energy beside her. It felt like a lifeline in the midst of chaos. They worked quickly, integrating the device into the control systems, using its power to boost their shields and weaponry. Every second counted as they prepared for the oncoming assault. As they completed their preparations, a loud rumble echoed through the outpost, shaking the very foundation beneath them. The Drakari were approaching. The screens showed their ships moving in a tight formation, a wall of destruction barreling toward the outpost. The defenders braced themselves for impact. Jarek's voice rang out through the chaos. "Stay strong, hold your positions, remember what we're fighting for." The first blasts from the enemy ships struck the outer defenses, shaking the walls. Ilara focused on her console, her fingers flying as she activated the enhanced shields powered by the ancient device. Bright energy flared to life, enveloping the outpost in a protective barrier. The force of the impacts reverberated through the structure, but the shields held. Ilara's heart raced as she monitored the readings they were holding, but the Dracari were relentless. Their fire intensified as they sought to break through the defenses. Outside, the battle raged on. The sounds of explosions and cries of combatants filled the air. The fate of the outpost hung in the balance as they fought to protect what remained of their home. Kale fought valiantly at the front lines, pushing back against the onslaught of Dracari soldiers, his spirit unwavering as he inspired those around him. But as the minutes stretched on, Ilara could feel a strain on their defenses. The shields flickered under the sustained assault, and she knew they had to act fast. "We need to counterattack," she called out, her voice steady despite the chaos. "We can't just wait for them to break through, we have to strike back." Jarek nodded in agreement. "If we give them the chance, they will overwhelm us. We must take the fight to them." With a fierce determination, Ilara worked with Kale and Jarek to devise a plan. They would push back against the Dracari, regrouping their forces for a counteroffensive. As the enemy continued to bombard their position, Ilara felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through her veins. They were at a turning point, and she knew they had to seize the moment. Together they prepared for the next wave of combatants, the air thick with anticipation, and the knowledge that this battle could change everything. With a roar of defiance, the defenders steeled themselves, ready to fight for their future. As the Dracari pressed forward, they would not back down. They would reclaim their home and their lives together. As the Dracari intensified their assault, the air crackled with tension. Ilara felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. They had fortified their defenses, but the enemy was relentless, and they knew the time for a counteroffensive had come. Jarek rallied the troops, his voice resonating through the control room. "We are stronger together. We will not let fear dictate our fate. It is time to take the fight back to them." The defenders stood shoulder to shoulder, united in purpose, adrenaline coursing through their veins. They had fought hard, and now they were ready to reclaim their home. Ilara took a deep breath, feeling a surge of determination as she activated the command console. Her fingers danced over the controls, optimizing their systems and enhancing their weapons with the ancient device. The screens flickered, displaying the positions of the Dracari forces, clustered outside the outpost, readying themselves for another wave of attack. With the new power coursing through their systems, Jarek's eyes sparkled with resolve. "We will hit them hard. We will show them the strength of our unity." Kale stepped forward, leading a contingent of soldiers. "We'll break through their lines and push them back. We can't allow them to regroup." Ilara nodded, feeling a fierce pride swell within her as they prepared for the assault. She knew that together they could shift the tide of battle. Jarek initiated the plan, launching their ships from the outpost in a bold maneuver. They soared into the fray, cutting through the chaos with precision. As they approached the enemy lines, Ilara's heart raced. The battle unfolded before her like a dance of destruction. Ships twisted and turned, firing on the Dracari vessels that threatened to overwhelm them. With a powerful burst, Ilara activated the enhanced weapons system, the ancient device thrumming with energy as it unleashed a wave of devastating firepower. The Dracari ships exploded in a brilliant display of light and energy. As they faltered under the onslaught, the cheers of their allies echoed through the comms. But the victory was fleeting as new waves of Dracari reinforcements surged forward, their numbers seemingly endless and their resolve unwavering. Jarek's voice cut through the chaos. "Hold the line, push forward, do not falter." As Ilara maneuvered her ship, dodging enemy fire, she spotted a massive Dracari cruiser on the outskirts of the battle. It loomed ominously like a dark cloud, ready to unleash destruction. "We need to take that cruiser down," she shouted over the comms, directing her ship toward the looming threat. Kale and a group of fighters followed closely behind, forming a strike team determined to pierce the heart of the enemy formation. As they closed in, the cruiser began firing at them the energy blasts, lighting up the darkness of space. Elara dodged and weaved her ship through the chaos, focusing on their target. With every pulse of the ancient weapon, the power surged through her fingers. She felt the connection to something greater. This was more than a battle. It was a fight for their very existence. In a moment of clarity, she activated the weapon system, unleashing a concentrated blast that struck the cruiser with stunning force. The ship shuddered under the impact, but remained intact. Its defenses strong. Elara knew they needed to keep pressing forward. "We need to distract them," she called out. As they maneuvered around the cruiser, "We can't allow them to focus on our fighters." With renewed determination, Kale led the charge, distracting the cruiser as Elara and the others continued their assault, unleashing volley after volley of energy blasts. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the cruiser's shields began to falter, the crackling energy dimming under their relentless assault. Elara seized the opportunity. Now fire everything we have." The combined force of their attack surged forward, crashing into the cruiser's hull. With a blinding explosion, the ship erupted into flames, breaking apart in a brilliant display of destruction. Cheers erupted across the comms as the tide began to turn. The Drakari forces faltered, their cohesion shattered in the wake of the loss. But Elara knew they couldn't let up now. They had to seize the advantage they had created. They needed to push forward and capitalize on their victory before it slipped away. As the remnants of the Drakari cruiser disintegrated in a fiery blaze, a wave of exhilaration surged through Elara and her allies. They had struck a critical blow against the invaders, but the battle was far from over. Jarek's voice echoed through the comms. "We have them on the ropes, but we need to keep pressing forward. Now is our chance to take back the outpost for good." The Allied forces rallied around Jarek's command. Elara felt a rush of adrenaline as they moved to regroup and prepare for the next phase of their assault. With the Drakari reeling from the loss of their cruiser, the coalition fighters pressed forward, their ships weaving through the chaos, targeting the enemy lines that had begun to falter. Elara maneuvered her ship, expertly avoiding blasts of energy, while returning fire. The ancient weapon pulsed beside her, its energy resonating with every shot she fired. Around her, she saw the defenders fighting with renewed vigor. The bond formed in the heat of battle, uniting them in their struggle against the Drakari threat. Kale led a squadron of warriors in a fierce charge toward the heart of the enemy formation, his determination infectious as he shouted orders and encouragement. Elara focused on the tactical displays, scanning for vulnerable points in the Drakari defenses. She spotted a cluster of enemy ships tightly packed together. "We can break through there," she called out, directing her ship toward the target. The other fighters followed her lead, ready to capitalize on the opening. With a powerful burst of energy, they unleashed a coordinated strike, targeting the vulnerable group of ships. Their weapons striking true. The Drakari began to falter as panic spread through their ranks. With the tide of battle shifting, Elara felt a sense of purpose flooding through her. They were not just fighting to survive, they were reclaiming their future. The remaining Drakari ships struggled to maintain cohesion as their forces were torn apart by the relentless assault. The coalition was proving to be a formidable force. Jarek's voice rang out once more. "Push forward. We will not stop until we reclaim every inch of our home." Elara felt a surge of determination as they pressed the advantage. They had fought hard, and now they were on the brink of victory. But just as hope began to blossom, a massive Drakari flagship emerged from the shadows, its dark silhouette dwarfing the remaining ships. It moved with ominous intent. Elara's heart sank as she recognized the threat. This was the command ship, the one that coordinated the entire Drakari offensive. "We have to take it down," she shouted, urgency lacing her words. It could turn the tide back in their favor. Jarek nodded grimly. "We need to focus our firepower on that ship if we are to end this once and for all." As the flagship advanced, its weapons charged and ready, Ilara and the others coordinated their attack. They needed to work together to penetrate the flagship's formidable defenses. The coalition fighters formed a tight formation, a united front, as they approached the massive ship, their weapons primed and ready. Ilara felt the energy of the ancient device coursing through her fingers as she prepared to unleash their combined firepower on the flagship. In that moment of unity, she felt a connection to all those fighting beside her. They were no longer just individuals, they were a force driven by hope and determination. With a resounding battle cry, they unleashed a torrent of energy at the flagship, the beams of light merging into a brilliant display of power. The flagship shuddered under the assault, its shields flickering, but it held strong. The Drakari were not ready to concede. "We can't give up now," Ilara urged. "We have to press the attack." The coalition fighters continued their assault with every ounce of strength they had, drawing on the energy of their shared resolve. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the flagship's shields began to fail, its hull cracking under the relentless barrage of fire. Ilara felt a surge of triumph. This was it. They would break through and reclaim their future. With one final push, they unleashed everything they had. The energy blasts struck the flagship with blinding force. In an explosion of light, the flagship erupted into flames as the shockwave rippled through space. The remaining Drakari forces scattered in panic, their cohesion shattered, and for the first time hope flickered in the hearts of the defenders. As cheers erupted across the comms, Ilara knew they had achieved something monumental. They had turned the tide of battle and secured a future for their people. Together they had rewritten their fate, forged in the fires of combat, and united by a shared purpose, ready to face whatever lay ahead.